Thank you very much, Sheriff. Minister, I want to go back to MaRS here on a few things and get a few things on the record. I think maybe what it is, maybe you and I will explore MaRS together for the next 20 minutes and this, what appears to be a steady stream of taxpayer money, truckloads of money going from Queen's Park down the road to college. So let's start off by this, Minister. There's, from what I've been able to determine, there's about 8 different companies under the MaRS umbrella. There's MaRS Services, there's MaRS Enterprises, there's MaRS 2, there's MaRS 2 Trust, there's Cogneti, there's MaRS Venture. So just for the record, the loan, the mortgage, the $234 million mortgage, which is in default or non-performing, who was that loan made out to? Which one of those MaRS entities has that loan that you're paying the interest on out of the Ministry of Innovation?
I'll ask my ministry folks to provide me, if they can, with that answer. I think, though, as they're doing that, it's important for me to also put on the record that you're incorrect when you talk about a steady stream.
No, Minister, I asked the questions here. You're waiting to get the answer. I'll be patient, and I'll wait for the answer to come from your staff.
Well, you asked the question, and I'm responding exactly to your question. No, hold on.
I'll go on to my next question.
Well, I will answer your first question first. You can ask your second question.
Excuse me, Minister. I'm asking the questions. You couldn't answer it. I'll be patient and wait for your staff to get the questions, the answers to it. My next question, while we're waiting for that, is...
I can give you the answer right now, sir, if you wish.
Thank you.
The loan, the $224 million loan,
yes,
was to MaRS Discovery District, which is the umbrella organization.
MaRS Discovery District.
Correct.
Okay. Now, the bailout of the $70 million to Alexandria Real Estate, what, and the minister said that you've bought this out and now you're going to examine and determine these ongoing challenges. So I'm going to ask, what actually did the taxpayer purchase? What tangible effects did the taxpayer get for that $70 million bailout of ARE? Did we purchase the leasing rights? Did we purchase anything with it? What did the taxpayer get for that $70 million bucks?
Well, let me,
other than your time to examine and the ongoing challenges.
Let me be very clear here. We've made, first off, you're incorrect. It's a $65 million investment that is paying for ARE's interest in this particular project. They were hired, and I'm speaking in layman terms here as I say this, it's probably more technical in terms of their role, to more or less manage the Phase 2 project and operate it. Now, I'll let staff correct me if that wording is not 100% correct. They had the ability to determine what the lease rates would be. The reason why we move forward to buy out, it's not a bailout. They're taking a write-down for this. This is not a bailout in any way. This is an opportunity for the province to be able to get to a point where we'll have some options with regard to how we move forward to address the challenges of Phase 2.
So you've answered the question. We've purchased. They had their interest, and their responsibility with that investment was to manage and operate. So we have now bought them out. The taxpayer has bought them out through your ministry, and we get to manage and operate a facility, a building that has a non-performing mortgage on it that we, so the taxpayer is on the hook for the mortgage. We also have paid for the privilege now of managing and operating the building, and we've also committed to paying rent in at least 4 floors of a building that we've bailed out. Is that correct,
No,
Minister?
it's not, but I guess what what I would need to better respond to your concerns are, what is it about the buyout of ARE that you're opposed to? Because other than your colleague, I haven't asked an individual yet for their view, be they a financial expert, be they one of our very qualified public servants, that has said anything but buying out ARE is a good business decision on behalf of taxpayers.
Well,
So
I'll
from-
answer that, Minister. I make decisions after I gain the facts and I have knowledge. That's when I make decisions and recommendations. So what I'm trying to do here is get the facts. So we know that MaRS the government has no oversight of MaRS. There's no legislative framework. We don't appoint any directors onto the board. There's no lieutenant governor appointments. There is absolutely no mandate or requirement of MaRS to report to this government. However, and I think you demonstrated that in my colleague's earlier questions to you, we have no oversight. There is no mandate or legislative requirement for them to be accountable to this legislature, but we have lent them $234 million, which they can't pay back. Their partner in that investment was, we also bailed out by $65 million. And now we've also agreed to rent 4 floors of a building. Now, I want to know, who are we paying rent to on this structure now? When those four floors are taken up in occupancy, are we paying rent to MaRS, who is in default of the mortgage to the Ontario government? What's going on with this this building of red ink called MaRS down here?
Well, your rhetoric outdistances the reality here, and you're entitled to whatever rhetoric you want. But at the end of the day, it's the facts that you do have, the same facts that I have, and the same facts that I had when I made the recommendation to our government to buy out ARE, the facts that our public servants had when they made that recommendation to me, and that our independent panel with Michael Nabrega and Carol Stevenson had as well. So you are at no disadvantage when it comes to the facts here. If you have information,
It's nice to know that we now are on the hook to manage and operate.
if you
the
have
building as
information
well.
that I'm not aware of that suggests that is not a good business decision on behalf of the taxpayers of this province, my suggestion, you're before committee here, you're eyeball to eyeball with me now, would be a very opportune time with all of our colleagues here today,
That's
with
what
the
we're gonna
media
do.
here as well.
We're gonna explore MaRS together.
To share that information with me, because
so-
I would be very interested, because this deal hasn't closed yet.
Good.
Before the deal closes and time is ticking, I'd be very interested to hear if you have
So
anything
let's
credible to say
get some more
on the
facts
ARE
on the-
deal.
let's get some
To
more
share that
facts.
with me now,
Minister,
because I'm
you've-
looking forward to hearing that.
Okay, let's get some more facts on the table. You said yesterday in this committee that you had Treasury Board approval for your transactions with MaRS, that you didn't need to go to Cabinet, you didn't need to get instruction from the Premier on this. You had Treasury Board approval. You can act on your own. I want to ask this very simple question. That Treasury Board approval, does it have an upset limit attached with the approval, or is it open-ended?
I would have to go back and check to see what that actual approval is.
You've made a decision on this, and you don't know what the upset limit is?
The fact of the matter is.
You talked about taking away risk from the taxpayer yesterday and today. What is the risk? What is the upset limit that you've got approval for?
Well, I can tell you that the $65 million that we agreed to is well within the upset limit. I guess I come back to you now. If that's 65.
You're not being open. You're not being transparent.
I'm being 100% open. The deal is $65 million, which I announced within hours of closing that negotiation. I don't believe you can be more upfront than that. It's $65 million.
I asked what the upset limit is for your Treasury Board approval on this
And I'm
MaRS
telling you, the
project.
$65 million was well within the upset limit.
What is the upset limit?
My question to you would continue to be, what is it about the $65 million that you're concerned
I want to know what the
about?
upset limit.
Mr. Dong, point of order.
Madam Chair, I just want to know if what the member is asking with regard to Treasury Board decision up, is that within the parameter of estimate committee?
You should read the parliamentary.
I'm asking for.
Mr. Dong, the minister referenced it, and so the member now has the actual right to actually go to that line of question.
So, Minister, you're not
Trying
going
to
to
get
give this
clarification.
committee the upset limit? Is that yes or no?
I'm very pleased to advise committee that I would not enter into negotiations or finalize negotiations that's outside of the perimeters laid out to me by Treasury Board.
But you were not going to be
and-
open and transparent and share that number with
And
us? That's yes or no?
the $65 million, which you appear to think is not a good deal on behalf of taxpayers.
Minister, you already answered the question. We'll go on to the next one. So, Minister, you've got a building that is partially occupied. We have a non-performing default loan that the taxpayers are on the hook for. We've bailed out an American developer. And I have to say, who else loses money on real estate in downtown Toronto these days? It's just about astonishing. But I want to ask this minister, because you're so adamant about taking risk away from the taxpayers and being investing wisely for the taxpayers. We know that we now have to also manage and operate this building according to what we've taken over from the ARE. What is the added on cost? How much more is with the relocation of the Public Health Ontario from Resources Road to those 4 floors, the relocation of the level 3 lab, and this is a level 3 lab. They do testing on specimens and investigations on disease such as encephalitis, SARS. They won't do Ebola, that's level 4, but that's the level of laboratory work that will be taking place next door to Queen's Park here and next door to our hospitals. And I want to ask this minister, how much more money is being paid out in rent for that lab that we just spent $38 million on to renovate out on Resource Road? We're moving those people down here. We're going to leave the warehouse out on Resource Road. What's the added cost to the taxpayer now, and where's that factored into the estimates? What is the square footage cost for those 4 floors? What's the total cost to the taxpayer?
Well, Madam Chair, the member's meandering, uninformed as it is on this issue, suggests somehow or another that Ernst & Young's report to us and analysis
What is the added cost?
of this building and the investments that we as a government have made in MaRS somehow it results in a loss. Madam Chair, that is absolutely untrue. And if the member was here yesterday,
So this is a wise investment.
and I'm sure the member listened very carefully to what I had to say yesterday, and I'm sure the member would not want to suggest Ernst & Young is not a credible organization. They've said
you
that
know
the
what the
investment that
cost
we've
is?
made in MaRS is equal to or less than the value of the building. So when the member suggests in his meandering, uninformed as it is, that somehow there is an inherent loss here, he must have information that I don't have.
We have no
At this
oversight,
point
we
in
have
time,
no
Ernst &
accountability,
Young
and
has
we
been very
obviously
clear
don't know
that
what the
that's-
rent is going to be.
that's
I asked
simply-
you what the
that's
rent
simply
is, what is
untrue.
the added cost? Do you know? Do you know what the added cost is?
The, any questions with regard to the Public Health Ontario are not part of my
Well, you're
estimates,
managing and
the member
operating the
would-
building
would
now. You just
understand
bought
that.
out ARE. And that was their obligation. That, you just stated that to committee.
I'm trying to answer your question, but you keep interrupting me, but if you go ahead, keep
Well,
interrupting
you-
me. and
You
I'll
don't
wait.
know how much the cost is that you're charging out because, as you said, you've bought out those interests. You're managing and operating that MaRS 2 tower. So let me just, you don't know that question.
Well, you haven't given me a
Let
chance to respond. No, hold on, you haven't given me a chance to respond. I think you really ought to give me a chance to respond. But you can go on to your next question. It's your
Okay.
time. I don't want to
Okay. Next
manipulate
question.
your time, but
Minister.
I hope that your
Okay,
next
well,
question
I'll
has
go
more
on to the next
accuracies than
question
your
then.
previous one.
Minister, this bailout, now over $300 million that we're looking at right now, and we don't know what the upset limit of the transaction cost for MaRS is, but this clearly, the Premier stated very unequivocally that looking at the asset sales such as the LCBO and mentioned specifically the LCBO building, and that money was going to be realized and then invested into infrastructure and roads. It appears to me we're bailing out MaRS. This bailout is going to be a lot more than what the money realized from the LCBO sales. Don't you agree?
No.
No. Okay.
2 minutes left.
Minister, does it concern you that between all the grants and all the bailouts that are going down the road to MaRS, that in all these various for-profit and not-for-profit entities controlled by MaRS, do you not believe that the taxpayer should have some oversight, some scrutiny, some examination of what is going on with all the money that we're going there? With every other agency or delegated authority, we put in place procedures and methods to protect the taxpayer. This organization that gets truckloads of money and gets bailed out when they lose money on real estate in downtown Toronto, and we end up taking back their mortgages, we have no influence, no oversight, no scrutiny. It's hard to even find out which arm of MaRS we're dealing with here out of all their different arms. Does that not concern you? And do you think that fits with your mandate of investing wisely and being open and transparent?
Left.
I think what concerns me is the fact that the PC party seems to be making a sharp right turn away from the policies that they endorsed when they were absolutely in government. I mean, let me just quickly, in the minute I have left, and I may have to quote this, quote the Honourable Jim Flaherty back in April 2003, when he said, "Ontario's demonstrating leadership and foresight with this investment in the MaRS Discovery District. We're also pleased that the federal government shares our vision by matching our contribution to this world-class medical and biotech research center in Toronto. This initiative will accelerate Ontario's growth in research, innovation, and commercialization." The PCs believed in this investment then. Today, they're suggesting somehow or another that we should just throw out our investments to the biosector, throw out the vision that MaRS currently has, and not pay any attention to the
Is
fact
MaRS
that we
too
need
insolvent?
to continue to
Minister?
grow the economy and create jobs.
Minister.
Madam Chair, we're going to take a sensible approach to this issue.
Your time's
That's-
up, Minister.
And I'll continue to talk about this in the next round, I'm sure. Thank you.
Third party.